Hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library. And today we're going to look at Excel, which is so very versatile. And we're going to look at some of the basic ways we might cut or copy and then paste using cell contents, which might be text, they might be numbers, or it might be formulas. Before we get started looking at cut and copy and paste, let's take a second and look at our example spreadsheet here. And with it, I've decided to track my spending, and usually this is cash spending, because when I'm at work, I tend to, well, walk by a vending machine, and some days its contents are just calling my name. Now, I behave pretty well on Sunday. See, I didn't spend anything there. And on Saturday, yep, no, I wasn't in the office, so I didn't spend anything there. But most of the rest of those days, something caught my eye, and so whether it was chips or pop or candy of some kind, I forked out some cash. And I'd like to break that habit, and I think the best way to do it is to track my spending. So this is what I'm going to use to set up my worksheet. Now that we've looked at our example spreadsheet, let's talk a little bit about what copy is. Well, let's think about a piece of paper, and on that paper you have, say, a letter or a memo or even a really small spreadsheet, and now that you've printed it out, you've decided that you would like to make a copy or maybe even multiple copies. Well, what would you do? Well, you would take that paper to a copier machine where you would lay it on the glass and press the copy button, and when you're finished, you would have an original and a copy. Well, that process is very similar to what we're going to do in Excel. I've decided that I would like to copy the layout of what I've done for this first week, and I would like to put week 2 to the right of where I have week 1. So what I would like to do is select week 1, and I'm just going to hold down my mouse button and click and drag down over Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and even the word total. And then I'm going to go to this first group, the clipboard group, on the ribbon. And I can see that on the right-hand side of that group, there is something that looks like an original and a copy, both two pieces of paper, and I can click on that button. When I do, notice that the paste button becomes colorized. Well, I know that when I created that copy, that the copy is now in the clipboard, so I need to click where I want the copy to go. And in Excel, this is really important. You only select the top left cell where you want to paste, and you let Excel fill in all the rest. Well, I'm going to click here in D4. That's where I want the copy to go. And then I'm going to go to the paste button. Now the paste button is a composite button. So if I click at the top part of this button, it will copy not only the cell contents, but also the formatting that goes with that cell as well. So I'm going to click paste, but notice it's the top part of the button. Click, and now all of that information that was over here in column A that I selected is now also in column D. The only thing that I would need to do is come in and change that 1 to a 2. Another way that I might decide to do a copy and then paste of the information, just like we did before, is to first of all select all of that text that I want to copy, and then keeping my mouse over some of those cells that I've selected, do a right click. And as I go to the top, the second choice here is copy. And then just as we did before, I'm going to go to the cell, the very first cell in the top left, where I want to paste all of that information, and I can right click, and then I have all sorts of paste options. We're just going to take the first one to paste. While some people really like using ribbon buttons and other people really like to use the right click, there's another group of people who, probably because they've used computers for a long time, really prefer keyboard shortcuts. So let's go back up to the clipboard group in the ribbon, because as I hover my mouse over the copy button, we can see that the keyboard shortcut for copy is Ctrl C. And if I hover my mouse over the paste button, it says that paste is Ctrl V. So let's see how that would work. First of all, we need to select all the cells that we want to copy. And then I'm going to hold down the Control key and then very quickly press C and let them both up at the same time. And we can't really see that the information has gone to the clipboard. We just kind of have to trust that it has. But then we're going to click that location in the upper left where we want to start the paste. And then we're going to use Control and V, let up on both of them. And now we have that copy using a keyboard shortcut. There is another way that you might decide to copy and paste. You kind of have to be careful with this a little bit, but what we can do is click and drag over those same cells that we want to copy. But this time I'm going to hover my mouse on the edge of those cells, and I'm going to hold down the Control key. Now, if you look closely at my mouse, you can see that I still have the arrow for my mouse pointer, but it also has a little plus sign, meaning that I am going to copy what I have selected. So now I'm just going to press my left mouse button and click and drag and let up on the Control and the mouse button at the same time, and I have now made a really quick, easy copy. So now let's talk a little bit about cut and move. They are used somewhat interchangeably, although you'll generally see the term cut within your software. So what is cut or move? Well, let's picture a newspaper where you have found an article that you really like and you'd like to share it with a friend. And so rather than carry the whole newspaper, you simply take your scissors and you cut out that article that you thought was so great and you take it to the friend. Now that article is with the friend, it's no longer in its original location. In fact, the original location is now kind of a gaping hole within that newspaper. Well, same thing here with the idea of move. Let's say that where you live now, whether it's too big, too small, too hot, too cold, whatever, you decide that you would like to move to another location. Well, you would pack up everything that you have now currently in this current location, and you would move it to the new location. And so the new location would get all of the boxes and all of the stuff that you've decided you want to take with you, but your original location, the one where you are now, will basically have nothing except maybe some dust bunnies or something. So with move, again, you don't have anything now in your original location, and it has all been placed in another new location. For our first example for cut, let's look at our spreadsheet that has changed just a little bit. Week 2 is now below week 1, and let's say that we've looked at that and we're thinking, you know what, maybe I'd like to move that to the right of week 1 instead of below week 1. Well, what we can do is, just as we did with copy, we're going to select everything that we want to cut, and then we'll go up to the ribbon to the clipboard group, and this time we're looking for a pair of scissors. So we'll find those scissors where it says cut, and when we cut, it looks like, well, I don't know, did it move or not? So we do know, though, that that is going to go into the clipboard of the machine. And again, we get that marquee or marching ants that help us figure out what we have selected. Then we go to the new location. Well, I think I'll click on D4. And again, it's always the top left cell to get this paste started. And then we'll go to paste. And again, I'm just going to click on the very top of paste. And I have moved week 2 from below week 1 to beside week 1. Now let's look at another way to cut the text that is for week 2, because again we've decided to move it to the right of week 1, and this time we're going to right click. So we're going to click and drag over all of those cells so that we can be sure we've selected everything that we want to move. And then I'm going to keep my mouse pointer right on top of what I've selected, and I'm going to right click to get a shortcut menu. And then at the top of that shortcut menu, I have that pair of scissors that says cut, so we'll click cut. Now we can't really tell that anything much has happened. We just have to know that the cut piece is in the clipboard of the computer. And then I'm going to click in D4, which is the top left of where I want to paste. And I'm going to even then right click and select paste. And really I only have this first option, and I will click on that little button. And now I've moved week 1 and week 2 side by side, and there's nothing here left where week 2 was. Now let's look at the keyboard shortcuts, which we also used with paste, and let's see how that works with cut. First of all, we want to remind ourselves what those keyboard shortcuts are. So let's go to the clipboard group on the ribbon, and if I hover my mouse, I should get over that scissors. I should see that cut is Ctrl X, and just as a reminder, when we hover our mouse over the paste button, paste is Ctrl V. So now let's select the text that we want to move, and I'm going to hold down on my keyboard Ctrl and X, let them up, and I get the little marquee, the marching ants. Now from here, I'm going to take my mouse and click where I want to go, because I know that really what I have cut is in the clipboard of the machine, but I'm going to click on D4, which is the top left cell of where I want to paste. And then I'm going to hold down Ctrl and V, let them up together, and now I have moved that week 2 information from below week 1 to beside week 1. You can also use click and drag to move cell contents. Now I am going to suggest that if you use this technique, that the cells aren't too far apart. Sometimes when you try this and the cells are too far apart, then your mouse starts scrolling and all of a sudden you've lost where you wanted to go. But let's try it. Let's click on week 2, select all of the cells. I'm going to put my mouse right on top of that border, and you can see that I get kind of an interesting little plus sign that's attached to the arrow. It has small arrows pointing up, down, left, and right. That means move. So now I can click and drag and move it up to the right of week 1. Remember how we said that the paste button on the ribbon is a composite button? Well, let's look at just a couple of the ways that you might be able to paste by clicking on the bottom part of that button, and we'll also look at what happens when we copy or cut formulas and then paste them someplace else as well. Now let's start looking at the bottom of our composite paste button. And to do that, we're going to continue doing what we have been doing. We're going to select this week 2 selection of text, and we want to copy it, and we'll just go to the ribbon to do that. And we could cut as well, but we'll just copy. and then we'll click where we want to paste that new information. And now we're going to go to the bottom part of the paste button where you have the down arrow and click it. Now you get all sorts of different choices, and we're not going to look at every one, but the very first one here is named paste, which really means that if you forget that you have a two-part button and instead of clicking the top you click the bottom, this first option is exactly the same as clicking the top part of this paste button. So we'll click it, and we can see that yes, we have the original, we have a copy, and the copy has all of the bold formatting that we had in the original. For our next example, let's look at our week 2 information, and as I click on it we can see that it is according to our font group here, Calibri and 12 point, and we also know that week 2 and total are both bold. Well, I'm going to go to another sheet, and in this sheet we have defined all of the cells as formatted as, again, as we look at the font group, Britannic bold and 14. Well, what if I want to keep the same formatting as my text originally had? Well, let's go to sheet 1, and we're going to select this week 2 information, and we'll copy it again from the clipboard. Then I'm going to go to this other sheet, and I'm going to click where I'd like to paste that in, and I'm going to click on the lower part of that paste button, and then from that top row I can keep source formatting and click. So as you can see, when I click on, say, Monday, I still have Calibri and 12, but anywhere else that I click, it's Britannic, bold, and 14. So far, we've been copying or cutting text, although we could also do the same thing with numbers and have no issue. But if you have a cell that has a formula, then you need to be careful. So let's look and see how that works. For example, I do have one cell with a formula here in B12 where I get the total, and as I look at the formula in the formula bar, it says that I want to add cell contents starting with B5, ending with B11, and adding all of the cells in between those as well to get my $5.75. Well, I would like to have the same formula here in E12 so that I can figure out what I spent in week 2. Well, I'll select B12 and go to the copy button in the ribbon, and then I'll click right here where I want that total to be, which is E12, and then I'll go to the paste button, just the lower part. Now in this case I could select the first button. The second button also lets me paste formulas, or if the third button here is formulas, and if I had any number formatting, say $signs, it would carry those over as well. So we could take the third button this time. And now I have a formula that looks very good. It says we're going to add all of the cells starting at E5, ending at E11, and all of those cells in between. And we're going to assume that I already still have that formula on my clipboard. What happens if I click, say, here, and I again paste? Well, now I'm getting a reference. And what it is telling me is, as I hover my mouse here, that moving or deleting cells caused an invalid cell reference. And what it's really saying is, this formula, for example, knows that there are 7 days worth of information above it that it needs to add, whereas when I clicked here, I only have 2 cells above, and the pattern is incorrect for it to get the right total. So when you copy and paste, always make sure that you have the number of cells that you need for your formula to work correctly, and always check if it does have some sort of a error message that you can simply click on that cell, and when you see that exclamation point, rest your mouse on it and it will give you a hint as to how you can fix that particular issue. Let's look at what happens when we cut and paste and see if there's anything that happens that's different compared to what happens when we copy and paste. Now with copy and paste, when we did the copy, we found that the pasting automatically adjusted to the mouse's new location. Well, let's see what happens this time. So I've selected B12 and we're going to go up to the clipboard again and we're going to cut. Find the scissors and cut. And again, that information goes to the clipboard of our machine. And then I'd like to place that total in E12. So we'll click on E12 and then we're going to go to the paste button and the lower portion, just because we're not maybe sure how we could paste, well, there's only one button there, so we'll just click paste. Now, when we look, there's nothing in B12. It has moved to E12. And we have a total here, even though there are no numbers in column E except for that formula. So let's look at the formula to see what happened. Well, in the formula bar, it's telling us that it really just took that formula that was in B and it has moved it to E, but it's kept the cell references for B. So our formula is still adding B5 through B11. Well, you can see how if the numbers are in B, but the answer is in E, how that might be confusing. So you always want to be careful to label your formulas that are not really close to the numbers that they are working with. Well, let's try one more example. Let's again take this formula that's now in E12 and we're going to cut it. So we'll go back up to the scissors and cut. And this time let's click in G3 where we placed our formula before, except this time we're going to paste. And it's carried that total of 575 clear up here to G3. Now your eyes may tell you that that number that's in G3 should have something to do with column G, but when you look at the formula bar, oh man, it is still referencing column B, the sum of B5 through B11. So again, we might even write something about total of week 1 so that we understand what that formula is all about. But it really is a good reminder that when you copy or when you cut and then paste, you need to really look at your formulas because you may even get numbers that look right, but double check what that formula actually says because it could be very misleading and you may be getting numbers in your spreadsheet that really are inaccurate. So be very careful when you copy or cut and you're playing with formulas. Our last example is a little more advanced than what we've been looking at so far, but it can be so helpful. I would sure like to show you that. And that is you can paste and transpose. So what does that mean? Well, let's say that we have our Sunday, Monday, Tuesday days of the week in a column, and we haven't done a lot of pre-planning of our spreadsheet, so after a while we realized that we'd be much better off if the days of the week went across a row as column headings rather than down that column as they are now. Well, I'm going to select that text, and then I'm just going to copy so we can compare. And then I'm going to click down here, which gives us a little more room in row 15. And then for paste, I'm going to click the bottom of that button and go to the second row and the last choice, transpose. And just that easily, I have taken 7 different items of text and placed them across one row as opposed to having them in their original configuration of being in a column. That can save you so much time and retyping if you remember to use transpose. For more information on Excel, be sure to go to mymcpl.org/online learning so that you can find some of our great online resources such as Universal Class, lynda.com, Who Knew It, and Learning Express Library. Be sure to join us each week for a variety of tech topics. Join us on Facebook at MCPL 360 on Tuesday at 2 or Wednesday and Friday at 1. If you happen to miss our Facebook premiere or you just simply prefer YouTube, be sure to look for our MCPL MO channel, which has our MCPL Consumer Technology Resources playlist.